Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the strange email on her computer screen for the 5th time that morning. The message was simple. Your research on human genetic adaptation has caught our attention. Please join us for an interview at the Morgan Institute, room 401, tomorrow at 2 p.m. There was no company name, no contact person, just an official-looking letterhead with a symbol she had never seen before. Sarah brushed her dark hair away from her face and checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror one last time. At 32, she was young for a leading geneticist, but her work on environmental adaptation in human populations had earned her respect in the scientific community. Still, something about this interview felt different. The Morgan Institute turned out to be a sleek glass building in the middle of downtown. The security guard barely glanced at her ID before directing her to the elevator. As she reached the 4th floor, Sarah's stomach tightened with nervous energy. Room 401 was nothing like she expected. Instead of the usual office furniture, the room was dimly lit with a soft, blue-tinted light. The air felt strange, almost electric. And there, in the center of the room, stood something, or someone, that made Sarah freeze in her tracks. The being was tall, nearly 7 feet, with a body that seemed to be made of semi-transparent crystals. Light moved through its form like water, creating patterns that shifted and changed with each movement. Where a human would have a face, there was a smooth, faceted surface that rippled with colors. Dr. Chen, the being spoke, its voice surprisingly warm and clear. Please, don't be alarmed. I am Dr. Zixtal. My appearance might be unexpected, but I assure you, this interview is very real. Sarah's scientific mind kicked in, overriding her initial shock. She took a careful step forward. You're not human, she managed to say. A sound like tinkling crystals filled the room. The alien's laugh. No, I'm not. I'm what you might call a crystalline, from a star system in what your people named the Andromeda Galaxy. Please, sit down. We have much to discuss. A comfortable chair seemed to materialize from the shadows. Sarah sat, her heart racing, but her curiosity growing stronger by the second. We've been watching your work with great interest, Dr. Zixtal continued. Your research on human genetic adaptation to extreme environments is particularly fascinating to us. You see, my species has a problem, one that we believe humanity might help us solve. What kind of problem? Sarah asked, finding her voice growing stronger. We're stuck, the crystalline being said simply. Evolutionarily speaking, my species evolved to near perfection for our environment thousands of years ago. But now our star is changing, and we cannot adapt fast enough. Yet humans. Dr. Zixtal's surface rippled with colors of amazement. Humans adapt to new conditions within a few generations. From Arctic cold to desert heat, from sea level to mountain peaks, your species thrives everywhere. Sarah leaned forward, professional interest overtaking her fear. That's because our ancestors faced constant environmental changes. We evolved to be adaptable rather than perfectly suited to one environment. Exactly. Dr. Zixtal's form pulsed with excitement. And that's why you're perfect. Perfect for my evolution, for our species' evolution. The alien moved closer, its crystalline form casting prismatic patterns on the walls. Dr. Chen, I'm not here to simply interview you for a job. I'm here to propose something much more significant. Would you consider helping us understand and possibly incorporate human adaptive capabilities into our species? Sarah sat back, her mind racing with the implications. This wasn't just a job offer. It was an invitation to participate in something that could change the course of an entire alien civilization. I have so many questions, she said finally. Of course you do, Dr. Zixtal replied warmly. And we have all the time you need to answer them. After all, this might be the most important decision of your life and the future of my species. 2 days after her strange interview, Sarah found herself in a hidden laboratory beneath the Morgan Institute. Dr. Zixtal's crystalline form glowed softly in the dim light as they moved between rows of advanced equipment she had never seen before. What you're about to see, the alien scientists said, will change how you think about human beings forever. A large screen flickered to life on the wall. Images appeared showing different human populations from around Earth. People living in the Himalayas, tribes from the Amazon rainforest, communities in the Arctic, and villages in the hottest deserts. Look at this data, Dr. Zixtel said, pointing to charts next to each image. Your Himalayan populations developed different blood types to survive high altitudes. Arctic peoples adapted to extreme cold within a few thousand years. Desert communities evolved to need very little water. The alien surface rippled with excitement. Do you know how extraordinary this is? Sarah shook her head. It's just natural selection, isn't it? The crystalline being made the tinkling laugh again. Just natural selection. Dr. Chen, we've studied thousands of species across hundreds of planets. None of them can adapt as quickly as humans. Most species need millions of years to show even small changes. But humans? Dr. Zixtel's form pulsed with bright colors. You change in mere centuries. Walking to another screen, the alien showed her something new. Images of their own species. Look at us. We're perfect for our world. Our bodies can absorb and process stellar energy directly. We can communicate through light patterns. We survive in conditions that would kill most life forms. The alien's voice grew softer. But that perfection has become our weakness. Sarah leaned closer to study the images. What do you mean? We stopped evolving, Dr. Zixtel explained. We became so perfectly adapted to our environment that we lost the ability to change. Now our star is growing hotter, changing our planet's conditions, and we can't adapt fast enough. The alien turned to face her directly. But you humans, you're different. You never stopped changing. Moving to another station, Dr. Zixtel showed her a complex 3D model of human DNA next to crystalline genetic structures. We can absorb traits from other species, merge them with our own. It's how we evolved originally. But we've never found a species with genetics as flexible as humans. Sarah watched as the model showed human DNA responding to different environmental pressures, changing and adapting. Next to it, the crystalline structure remained rigid, unchanging. Our scientists always saw human imperfection as a weakness, Dr. Zixtel continued. Your bodies break easily. You need constant food and water. You die from simple temperature changes. But now we understand. These aren't weaknesses at all. They're the price of being adaptable. The alien scientist touched a control panel, and a new simulation appeared. It showed human and crystalline genetic structures merging, creating something entirely new. This is what we hope to achieve, Dr. Zixtel said. Not to copy human DNA, but to learn from it. To relearn how to adapt, how to change. The alien's form dimmed slightly. Without this, my species might not survive the next 1,000 years. Sarah sat down, her mind racing with the implications. Everything she knew about human genetics was being turned upside down. What she had always seen as human limitations were actually their greatest strengths. There's more, Dr. Zixtel said quietly. We've discovered it's not just your physical adaptability that makes humans unique. There's something else, something even more extraordinary. The alien's form pulsed with a new pattern of colors. Would you like to see? Sarah nodded, realizing that every new revelation was pulling her deeper into this incredible project. Show me, she said, her voice firm with determination. Sarah had never imagined her next workplace would be on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. Yet here she was, stepping out of an alien shuttle into a vast underground facility carved deep beneath the moon's frozen surface. Dr. Zixtel walked beside her, the alien's crystalline form reflecting the blue-white lights that lined the corridors. Welcome to the archive, Dr. Zixtel said, gesturing at the enormous space before them. We've been studying Earth and its people from here for over 200 years. Sarah's eyes widened as they entered the main chamber. The walls were lined with thousands of glowing crystal data storage units, each pulsing with a soft light. In the center of the room, Dozens of holographic displays showed different human populations throughout history. "Look at this," Dr. Zixtel said, touching one of the crystals. A hologram sprang to life, showing ancient human tribes crossing the Bering Strait. Your ancestors walked across continents, adapting to every environment they found. Cold, heat, high altitudes, deep valleys, nothing stopped them. They moved to another display. This one showed pearl divers from Southeast Asia. These humans, the alien scientist explained, developed larger spleens to stay underwater longer. It took them less than 1,000 years. Do you understand how impossible this should be? Sarah watched in amazement as more images appeared. Tibetan highlanders, Amazonian tribes, Arctic communities. Each group had changed and adapted to survive in their unique environment. But this, Dr. Zixtel said, leading her to a special section of the archive, this is what truly amazes us. The alien activated a large central display, showing modern cities, space stations, and underwater habitats. In just a few centuries, humans went from living in simple shelters to creating their own environments. Instead of waiting to adapt, you learned to change your surroundings. Moving through the facility, they came to a laboratory area where other crystalline beings were working. Some were studying human DNA samples. Others were running complex simulations on huge screens. "We have a theory," Dr. Zixtel continued, "that human adaptability isn't just in your genes. It's in your minds, your creativity, your ability to imagine different futures and work toward them." The alien's form sparkled with excitement. "No other species we've studied can do this the way humans can." Sarah stopped at one of the workstations, watching as a simulation showed human brain activity patterns. "Is this why you really brought me here?" she asked. "Not just for our genetic adaptability, but for how we think." Dr. Zixtel's form pulsed with approval. "Yes, your species doesn't just adapt physically. You adapt mentally, emotionally, culturally. When faced with a problem, humans don't just evolve to solve it. You think, create, and change your whole way of life if needed." The alien led her to a sealed door at the far end of the laboratory. "Behind this door is our most important project. It's where we're trying to understand how human consciousness and adaptability work together." Dr. Zixtel's colors shifted to a more serious pattern. "Would you like to see what happens when we combine human adaptive thinking with our crystalline biology?" Sarah looked at the door, then back at the archives of human history surrounding them. Everything she had seen showed her a new way of understanding her own species. Humans weren't just smart animals who had gotten lucky. They were something extraordinary, perhaps unique in the galaxy. "Show me," she said firmly, feeling more proud of her humanity than ever before. Dr. Zixtel placed a crystalline hand on the door's scanner. "Remember," the alien said as the door began to open, "what you're about to see might change everything you think you know about evolution and about what humans might become." Sarah had never imagined her next workplace would be on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. Yet here she was, stepping out of an alien shuttle into a vast underground facility carved deep beneath the moon's frozen surface. Dr. Zixtel walked beside her, the alien's crystalline form reflecting the blue-white lights that lined the corridors. "Welcome to the archive," Dr. Zixtel said, gesturing at the enormous space before them. "We've been studying Earth and its people from here for over 200 years. Sarah's eyes widened as they entered the main chamber. The walls were lined with thousands of glowing crystal data storage units, each pulsing with a soft light. In the center of the room, dozens of holographic displays showed different human populations throughout history. "Look at this," Dr. Zixtel said, touching one of the crystals. A hologram sprang to life, showing ancient human tribes crossing the Bering Strait. Your ancestors walked across continents, adapting to every environment they found. Cold, heat, high altitudes, deep valleys, nothing stopped them. They moved to another display. This one showed pearl divers from Southeast Asia. These humans, the alien scientist explained, developed larger spleens to stay underwater longer. It took them less than 1,000 years. Do you understand how impossible this should be? Sarah watched in amazement as more images appeared. Tibetan highlanders, Amazonian tribes, Arctic communities. Each group had changed and adapted to survive in their unique environment. But this, Dr. Zixtel said, leading her to a special section of the archive, this is what truly amazes us. The alien activated a large central display, showing modern cities, space stations, and underwater habitats. In just a few centuries, humans went from living in simple shelters to creating their own environments. Instead of waiting to adapt, you learned to change your surroundings. Moving through the facility, they came to a laboratory area where other crystalline beings were working. Some were studying human DNA samples, others were running complex simulations on huge screens. We have a theory, Dr. Zixtel continued, that human adaptability isn't just in your genes. It's in your minds, your creativity, your ability to imagine different futures and work toward them. The alien's form sparkled with excitement. No other species we studied can do this the way humans can. Sarah stopped at one of the workstations, watching as a simulation showed human brain activity patterns. "Is this why you really brought me here?" she asked. "Not just for our genetic adaptability, but for how we think." Dr. Zixtel's form pulsed with approval. "Yes, your species doesn't just adapt physically. You adapt mentally, emotionally, culturally. When faced with a problem, humans don't just evolve to solve it. You think, create, and change your whole way of life if needed." The alien led her to a sealed door at the far end of the laboratory. "Behind this door is our most important project. It's where we're trying to understand how human consciousness and adaptability work together." Dr. Zixtel's colors shifted to a more serious pattern. "Would you like to see what happens when we combine human adaptive thinking with our crystalline biology?" Sarah looked at the door, then back at the archives of human history surrounding them. Everything she had seen showed her a new way of understanding her own species. Humans weren't just smart animals who had gotten lucky. They were something extraordinary, perhaps unique in the galaxy. "Show me," she said firmly, feeling more proud of her humanity than ever before. Dr. Zixtel placed a crystalline hand on the door's scanner. "Remember," the alien said as the door began to open, "what you're about to see might change everything you think you know about evolution and about what humans might become." Sarah couldn't sleep. Back in her private quarters on Europa, she paced the room, thinking about everything she had learned. The walls glowed softly with the same crystalline technology she had connected with earlier, but now that gentle light only reminded her of the huge decision she faced. A soft chime announced Dr. Zixtel's arrival. The alien scientist's form seemed dimmer than usual, showing concern. "You're troubled," Dr. Zixtel said. It wasn't a question. "How can I not be?" Sarah stopped pacing and faced the crystalline being. "What you're suggesting, it's not just about sharing human DNA anymore. You're talking about changing your entire species." "Yes," Dr. Zixtel's form pulsed slowly. "But isn't that what evolution is? Change." Before Sarah could answer, a new figure entered the room. Another crystalline being, but this one's form was sharp-edged and dark, pulsing with angry red lights. "This is Dr. Vexcor," Dr. Zixtel introduced, leader of our conservative science council. "This experiment must stop." Dr. Vexcor's voice was cold, unlike the warm tones of Dr. Zixtel. "Mixing our pure crystalline nature with primitive biological traits will destroy everything we are." Sarah felt her scientific pride rise up. "Primitive. We've shown that human adaptability is far more advanced than..." "Advanced." Dr. Vexcor cut her off. "Your species still fights wars. You destroy your own environment. You let emotions cloud your judgment." "Yes." Sarah stood straighter. "We make mistakes. We fight. We fail. But we learn from every failure. We adapt and grow stronger. When's the last time your species learned something new?" The room fell silent. Even Dr. Vexcor's angry red pulses slowed. "She's right," Dr. Zixtel said quietly. We haven't had a major scientific breakthrough in over a century. We're so afraid of imperfection that we've stopped growing. Dr. Vexcor moved closer to Sarah. And what if this experiment works? What happens when our perfect crystalline logic gets contaminated with human emotions, human impulses? Maybe that's exactly what you need. Sarah replied. Logic alone can't help you adapt. You need creativity, imagination, the ability to take risks. Many in our society agree with Dr. Vexcor. Dr. Zixtal explained to Sarah. They believe keeping our species pure is more important than survival itself. Sarah walked to the window, looking out at Europa's icy surface. On Earth, we have a saying, adapt or die. Every species that refused to change eventually went extinct. Pretty words from a primitive species. Dr. Vexicor's form flickered with dismissal. But I'm not here to debate. I'm here to warn you. If you continue with this experiment, there will be consequences. After Dr. Vexcor left, Sarah turned to Dr. Zixtal. How many others think like him? Almost half our population. Dr. Zixtal's colors showed worry. They would rather face extinction than change. Sarah sat down heavily. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm playing with forces I don't understand. Who am I to change the course of an entire species' evolution? Who were your ancestors? Dr. Zixtal asked. When they decided to leave the trees and walk on two legs? Who were they when they chose to use tools, to create fire, to build cities? Every great evolution starts with a choice. Sarah looked at her hands, thinking about all the generations of humans who had adapted and changed to survive. But what if we fail? What if we succeed? Dr. Zixtal's form brightened. What if we create something new, something better than either of our species alone? Before Sarah could respond, an alarm started blaring through the facility. Dr. Zixtal's form pulsed with urgent colors. What's happening? Sarah asked, standing up. It's begun, Dr. Zixtal said grimly. The crisis I feared. We're running out of time. Red warning lights flashed throughout the Europa facility as Sarah ran with Dr. Zixtal toward the main control room. Other crystalline beings moved quickly through the corridors, their forms pulsing with urgent patterns. What's happening? Sarah asked as they entered the control center. The room's walls were covered with holographic displays showing a distant star system. Our home star. Dr. Zixtal's voice was tight with worry. It's releasing massive radiation bursts, far sooner than we predicted. The alien scientist touched a control panel, bringing up new data. The first wave will reach our planet in less than 3 days. Sarah watched the readings with growing horror. These radiation levels, they would destroy your people's crystalline structure. Yes. Dr. Zixtal's form dimmed. Our perfect evolution has become our perfect weakness. We can't adapt fast enough to survive this. Suddenly, Dr. Vexcor burst into the room, his crystalline form crackling with angry energy. This is what comes from wasting time on human experiments. We should have been building protective shields. Shields won't be enough, Dr. Zixtal argued. The radiation will last for centuries. We need to adapt or our species dies. Sarah stood quietly, her mind racing. She was thinking about something she had learned in her research years ago. Wait, she said suddenly. Show me the human DNA tests again. The radiation resistance patterns. Dr. Zixtal quickly brought up the data. Sarah pointed to a specific sequence. Look here, human DNA can repair itself after radiation damage. Not perfectly, but enough to survive. And it can pass these improvements to the next generation. But the integration process takes too long, Dr. Vexcor said dismissively. We don't have years to wait for. What about the emergency response? Sarah interrupted. Humans don't just have long-term adaptation. We have immediate biological responses to threats, like how our skin tans in the sun for protection, or how our bodies create antibodies to fight new diseases. Dr. Zixtal's form brightened with sudden understanding. You mean we could trigger an immediate adaptive response instead of waiting for gradual evolution? Exactly. Sarah moved to the central console, pulling up her previous test results from the Harmony chamber. Look at how quickly your crystalline network learned from my mind. What if we could do the same thing with human DNA's emergency response systems? The room fell silent as the two alien scientists studied the data. Even Dr. Vexacor's hostile energy seemed to dim with interest. It could work, Dr. Zixtel said finally. But it would require a complete neural interface, not just a simple test. We would need to fully map and integrate human emergency response patterns into our crystalline matrix. You mean someone would need to? Sarah's voice trailed off as she realized what that meant. Yes. Dr. Zixel turned to face her directly. A human consciousness would need to merge completely with our network, not just sharing thoughts, but becoming part of our collective biology, teaching our entire species how to adapt in real time. Dr. Vexcor moved forward. It's too dangerous. No species has ever survived a full neural merge with our collective. No species as adaptable as humans has ever tried, Sarah countered. She looked at the display showing the approaching radiation wave, then at her own hands, thinking about all the generations of humans who had faced impossible challenges and found a way to survive. I'll do it, she said firmly. Sarah, Dr. Zixtel's form pulsed with concern. You need to understand. This isn't just risky. It's never been done before. You would be rewriting the laws of biology itself. Sarah smiled slightly. Isn't that what humans do best? We see impossible walls and find ways through them. Another alarm blared, showing the radiation wave had picked up speed. They had even less time than they thought. How soon can we begin? Sarah asked, her voice steadied despite her racing heart. First, Dr. Zixtel said gravely, there's something else you need to know about the merge process. Something that will change you forever. Sarah sat alone in her quarters, staring at the small hologram of Earth floating above her desk. Dr. Zixtel's words echoed in her mind. The merge isn't temporary. Your consciousness will become part of our collective forever. You'll never be fully human again. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The door opened to reveal both Dr. Zixtel and Dr. Vexacor. The two crystalline beings couldn't look more different, one glowing with warm, hopeful colors, the other dark and sharp with doubt. Time is running out, Dr. Vexacor said without greeting. If you're going to attempt this foolishness, it must be now. You're sure there's no other way? Sarah asked, looking at Dr. Zixtel. None that would work in time. Dr. Zixel's form pulsed gently. The radiation wave is accelerating. Our people have already started evacuating the outer colonies, but soon nowhere will be safe. Sarah stood and walked to the window, watching the ice storms rage across Europa's surface. Tell me exactly what will happen to me. Your mind will join with our crystalline network, Dr. Zixtel explained. Your consciousness will expand to touch every member of our species. Your human ability to adapt, to change, to survive. It will spread through our entire civilization. And you'll lose yourself, Dr. Vexacor added harshly. Your human identity will dissolve into our collective. You won't die, but you won't be you anymore either. That's not entirely true, Dr. Zixel countered. Your core consciousness will remain. But you'll be more than human. You'll experience existence in ways no human ever has. Sarah touched the window's cold surface. And if I don't do it? Then we watch my species die, Dr. Zixel said quietly. Billions of minds, centuries of knowledge, all gone. Suddenly, alarms blared again. A new hologram appeared showing the radiation wave's progress. It had gained even more speed. How is that possible? Sarah asked, studying the data. The wave is feeding on our star's energy, Dr. Zixtel explained. It's growing stronger, faster. We now have less than 24 hours. Dr. Vexcor moved to the door. I came to witness your choice, human. Will you destroy our purity to save our existence? Or will you let nature take its course? Sarah looked back at the Earth hologram. Everything she was, everything humans had become over millions of years of evolution, was contained in her DNA and consciousness. By sharing it, she could save an entire civilization, but the price would be her humanity. "What about my human life?" she asked softly. "My family, my research, my future." "You would be trading one future for another," Dr. Zixel said. "Your human body would remain in suspended animation, kept safe while your consciousness merges with us. But your experience of existence would be forever changed." Another alarm sounded. More emergency lights flashed. "The outer colonies are falling," Dr. Vexcor announced, checking a data stream. "The radiation is already affecting our people there. They're beginning to break down." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering all she had learned about human history. How many times had her ancestors faced impossible choices? How many had sacrificed everything to help others survive? Opening her eyes, she squared her shoulders. "I'll do it," she said firmly. "But I have one condition." Both crystalline beings turned to her. "My human body," she said. "Keep it safe. And if this works, if your species survives and adapts, promise you'll find a way to either restore me or—" She took a deep breath. "Or help me fully join your kind." No being trapped between two forms of existence. Before either alien could respond, the facility shook with a violent tremor. Emergency lights turned from red to deep purple. "What was that?" Sarah asked, steadying herself. Dr. Zixtel's form pulsed with alarm. "The Conservative Council," the alien said grimly. "They're trying to stop us." The entire facility shook again as Sarah, Dr. Zixtel, and Dr. Vexcor raced toward the Harmony Chamber. Emergency lights flashed everywhere, and the crystalline walls pulsed with warning patterns. "The Conservative Council has sealed off the main entrance." Dr. Zixtel's form flickered with urgency. "We'll have to use the maintenance tunnels." "Why are you helping us now?" Sarah asked Dr. Vexcor as they changed direction. "Because I just watched our outer colonies die," the dark crystalline being replied grimly. "Theory and purity mean nothing when faced with extinction." They reached a small service door. Beyond it, narrow tunnels glowed with emergency lighting. As they hurried through, Sarah could hear sounds of fighting above them. "What's happening up there?" she asked. "The Council's forces are trying to shut down the facility," Dr. Zixtel explained. "They believe letting our species die naturally is better than changing it artificially." Finally, they reached the Harmony Chamber. The crystal formations seemed to pulse faster than before, as if sensing the urgency of the moment. The central chair glowed with intense blue light. "The interface is ready," Dr. Zixtel said, quickly moving to the control panels. "But Sarah, you should know, once we start, there's no going back. The process cannot be reversed midway." Sarah looked at the chair that would change her forever. "How long will it take?" "To fully merge your consciousness." "About 10 minutes," Dr. Zixtel answered. "But we need at least 5 minutes after that for your adaptive patterns to spread through our network." Another explosion rocked the facility. Parts of the ceiling began to crack. "They're breaking through." Dr. Vexcor moved to the door. "I'll try to hold them off." "Start the process." Sarah sat in the chair quickly. Unlike her first test, this time the crystalline structure immediately began to wrap around her, creating a cocoon of living crystal. "Remember," Dr. Zixtel said, activating the final sequences, "let your mind flow naturally. Don't fight the changes. Your human ability to adapt is what will save us." The process began. Sarah felt her consciousness expanding, touching first hundreds, then thousands, then millions of crystalline minds. It was overwhelming, but her mind did what human minds had always done. It adapted. She saw the history of the crystalline species flash through her awareness. Their first emergence from energy into matter, their development of collective consciousness, their rise to incredible technological achievements, and then their long, slow slide into stagnation. "It's working." Dr. Zixtel's voice seemed to come from both outside and inside her mind. "Your adaptive patterns are spreading through the network." The door burst open. Conservative Council forces poured in, their forms dark and threatening. But they stopped in amazement at what they saw. The crystal cocoon around Sarah had become transparent, showing her human form now interlaced with crystalline patterns. More importantly, every crystalline being in range, including the council forces, was beginning to pulse with new colors. Colors that showed the first signs of adaptation. What is happening to us? One of the council members asked, their form shifting with unfamiliar patterns. We're learning to change again, Dr. Vexcor answered, watching his own form begin to shift. Through her, we're remembering how to evolve. Inside the cocoon, Sarah experienced something extraordinary. She wasn't losing her human consciousness. She was expanding it. She could feel the radiation wave approaching, but now she could also sense new possibilities, new ways of adaptation that neither humans nor crystalline beings had imagined before. Through the collective network, she sent out a single thought. This is how humans face crisis. We don't just survive. We transform. The crystalline beings, all of them, felt their rigid structures begin to shift, begin to adapt. For the first time in centuries, their species was changing. But in the midst of this triumph, Sarah made a stunning discovery, one that would change not just the crystalline beings, but the very future of both species. 1 year had passed since the transformation. The crystalline homeworld glittered under its changing star, but now its surface was alive with new forms of crystal structures that could adapt to the intense radiation. In the central science chamber, a unique being stood watching the sunset through special observation windows. She looked both human and crystalline. Sarah Chen's body was now interlaced with living crystal formations that shifted and changed with her thoughts. After the merge, she had discovered something unexpected. Her human consciousness was strong enough to maintain its identity while still being part of the collective. The latest reports are in, Dr. Zixel said, approaching her. The alien scientist's form was different now, showing the new adaptability their species had gained. Every colony has successfully evolved. Not a single life was lost to the radiation. Sarah smiled, her crystalline patterns glowing with satisfaction. And the Conservative Council. They've become our strongest supporters. Dr. Zixel's form sparkled with amusement. Especially Dr. Vexicor. He's leading the research into new applications of human adaptability. Through her connection to the collective, Sarah could feel the truth of these words. The entire crystalline civilization had changed. They were no longer trapped in perfect but rigid forms. Each individual could now adapt and change while staying connected to the whole. We've had another request, Dr. Zixel continued. The third one this month. Sarah nodded, already knowing through the collective consciousness. Another alien species had asked to learn about the human crystalline integration. Word had spread through the galaxy about how humanity's adaptability had saved an entire civilization. What should we tell them? Dr. Zixel asked. Sarah walked to a special chamber nearby. Inside, suspended in a protective field, was her original human body, preserved perfectly. Next to it stood several empty crystal formation chambers. We tell them the truth, she said. That evolution isn't about becoming perfect. It's about staying adaptable. And that sometimes the biggest changes come from embracing what seems like weakness. She touched the chamber's surface, remembering her old fears about losing her humanity. Instead, she had helped create something new. A bridge between individual identity and collective consciousness, between biological and crystalline life. The other human volunteers will be arriving next month, Dr. Zixel said. Are you ready to teach them how to make the transition? Sarah's form glowed with confident colors. After her successful transformation, other humans had stepped forward, eager to help guide more species toward adaptive evolution. Each would maintain their unique human consciousness while joining different collective networks. Look, she said, pointing to a display showing their star system. Our ships are already adapting to travel faster through space. Soon we'll reach other galaxies. Her crystal patterns shifted with excitement. Imagine what we'll discover, how we'll continue to evolve. Dr. Zixel's form pulsed with grateful colors. You gave us more than survival, Sarah. You taught us how to live again, how to grow. Through the collective network, Sarah felt the happiness and curiosity of billions of crystalline beings. They were no longer afraid of change or imperfection. Like humans, they had learned to see challenges as opportunities for growth. "You know what the most human thing about all this is?" Sarah asked, her form glowing with both crystalline light and human warmth. "What's that?" "We're still not perfect," she smiled. "We're just better at adapting to our imperfections. And that's exactly what evolution is all about." As she looked out at the glittering crystalline city, Sarah felt a deep satisfaction. Humanity's greatest gift hadn't been perfect DNA or superior technology. It had been the simple, powerful ability to embrace change, to adapt, to evolve. And now, that gift was spreading across the stars, one species at a time, creating a galaxy where diversity and adaptation were celebrated, not feared. The story of human evolution hadn't ended. It had just found a new beginning.